We're here today to talk about putting people at the center of Office 365. So a big challenge a lot of organizations have is just making sure that the data that they've got is accurate. So I'll do a quick introduction here. My name is Chris Buchanan. I'm the Portals and Collaboration Practice Lead at DevFacto.
Hi, and I'm Jeremy Thake, the VP of Product Technology here at Hyperfish, based in Washington.
So, kind of kick things off, we thought we'd start off with a little bit of a poll. So, we know that everybody in the audience is not technical, but what we wanted to do is just get a sense of, within your organization, how many of you would say that the data, the employee data that you guys have, is both accurate and populated? We got a poll open there. You guys, just give you guys a quick minute to respond. And if anybody has any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to answer them. We've got 2 people here monitoring them. Okay, so it looks like, based on the responses that are coming in so far, a lot of you are saying that your information is partially populated or partially accurate. So that's perfect. So what we want to kind of talk today about is, as you're onboarding your organization into Office 365, or really just in your day-to-day operations, the challenges that you're going to have if the data is not accurate. So let's start off here. Just to kind of give you a sense, if you can answer yes to any one of these questions, I think like what we're going to show you here at the end is going to make a lot of sense for your organization. So in a lot of scenarios, like when you're using Office 365, Outlook, SharePoint, all of these systems are interconnected, and in so many implementations that we go out and see with customers, the very first thing that we see is that there just is no employee information right out of the gate. So if you're using Skype for Business or the old Link products, or Outlook, and you're looking at the contact information for the card, more often than not, an organization only has the first name, last name, and email populated. If you don't have that information available to you right away, the obvious next place to go when you're trying to find somebody's phone number is you start combing through all of your emails, start looking at email signatures. But there are so many people in so many different organizations that all they do is they have a simple Tony as an email signature, especially when they're doing internal replies. They don't put their full email signature on that. And so a lot of organizations have ended up actually going out and implementing like people search in SharePoint, or they'll have a completely different HR system in place just for looking at people's phone numbers. Another challenge that we see with a lot of companies is when an employee changes positions or they get a promotion, that information doesn't get reflected out to the company right away. When we talk to different organizations here at DevFacto, when we're setting up sites for them, we start asking the question, well, why didn't it get updated? To be honest, it is number 3 on this list of slides, but the number 1 reason that we hear is that the actual employee doesn't want to send in a request to IT to have their position changed, especially if it's like a simple change like analyst 1 to analyst 2 or manager to senior manager. They almost feel like the request is in vain, and they just don't want the connotations associated with that. But the other responses that we get, I'm just too busy. Like I don't have a clue of where I would even start within the organization to actually get that updated. I don't know if it's HR, I don't know if it's IT. As we start talking to like really large companies, they say, oh, that's actually not even managed in North America. That's done in an offshore data center by our managed services provider, and they don't even know who they would contact in that organization. And then in many cases, the messaging that comes back is, oh, the request is actually in progress, and everybody's just assuming it's on somebody else's plate to do it, and that the messages just get lost in the ether of the process. The surprising one that we get from a handful of companies, these are usually smaller companies, they don't even know that that contact information is actually available to the users in any of these systems. So keeping it up to date or current isn't even in their peripheral of high value tasks. Just kind of looking at the attendee list. There's a number of you that I think are in IT and HR roles. The amount of time that is actually spent keeping these up to date is often phenomenal. If you work in an organization with thousands of employees and you think of all the different contact information updates that you might have to do, you know, whether it's, you know, last name changes for marriages or location changes as they move between offices, title changes, obviously the biggest one, supervisor changes, team changes, new hires. The amount of time that your organization is going to spend on these types of updates, again, phenomenal. The kind of the collective process that an organization kind of goes through, like ensuring that HR signed off on the new information, requesting IT to update it, potentially going back to the initiator and reviewing it before it's live. All of this time just, you know, it builds up. This is a kind of a huge issue that we see here at DevFacto. So I'd ask the question to you guys: how many times, you know, within your organization have you rolled out some automated workflow and you start getting requests that actually, like, you're approving requests for that people don't even work for you, people that don't work for your company anymore, people you've never even heard of, and they didn't even work for you ever, and it's just because the information's been populated wrong. When we see this scenario, you know, like I said, a lot of the times we actually come in as a systems integrator and we'll actually implement workflows for companies. And in the out-of-the-box SharePoint and the other workflow tools that are available, there's a number of out-of-the-box components just to do a simple approval process, and you know, it's just based on having that hierarchy built in Active Directory. But as soon as we encounter that issue where the data isn't accurate anymore, what we end up doing is going and building some other type of approval mechanism. And if it's a SharePoint system, more often than not, it's just a list of users. And so we'll enable this, you know, kind of this additional silo of information so that the end users can come along, populate their core contact information, as well as their manager, and this, you know, secondary silo is kept up to date. But you know, in a worst case scenario, there'll be multiple teams all doing this kind of thing. So all of a sudden, in an organization that already has a system in place to track all of this, you'll start spawning up, you know, half a dozen, maybe even several dozen of these, you know, like rogue IT systems that now all have to be maintained. And kind of going back to that original point, you're now investing more of your internal time in this. But this kind of doesn't stop here, because now that we've got this third-party system in place for tracking all of this, we actually got to go back and modify the workflows and make them substantially more complicated than they were before, because now we got to pull from these secondary lists, and we're not using any of the out-of-the-box functionality that's kind of built into the approval process anymore. A big challenge that we see for a lot of organizations right now, and I'm not sure if anybody on the call is working with Office 365 yet, but as we enable a lot of these new cloud products from Microsoft, the experience that they saw, you know, in the demos and the webinars before they launched Office 365 was quite a rich and vibrant experience. Then when they actually implement it, they see something very dull and boring like this, and they're like, "This is an actual screenshot. You know, it's lonely in here." So they're wondering, like, you know, were we oversold? Like, you know, what's the difference? And if, you know, a lot of these collaboration tools, they're really, in order for them to work, they need to know who do you work with on a day-to-day basis. what location are you in? Like we want to provide you context sensitive information based on what your peers are working on, what your managers have visibility into, and what's really happening in your location within the organization. This is more of a pet peeve for a lot of organizations, something that they they'll almost have the profile picture police in place. But it does annoy a lot of professional individuals when they start using these tools, especially when you're working with your customers, outside sales individuals, and they're using any of these systems in any way, and you get a message that pops up, and it's like any one of these pictures here in the little profile. Many organizations spend a lot of time just making sure that if you're going to use these tools, let's make sure that we've got professional headshots in there. And because of the nuance of having to manage all of this information, more often than not, IT will just be instructed to just disable that feature. And in today's day and age, disabling features, it's got tons of downstream implications. You disable this one feature here, well, then you lose the that comparable information in the Dell profile, for example. Say you don't enable the locations, well, then you can't get that context information about what's happening in your location. So it's disabled for one purpose, but when it's disabled, everybody doesn't realize the other implications of this. So for the people still on the line, I hope that through one of those scenarios you said yes to this. So the big question why you guys are here is, like, if I am experiencing this problem, how do I fix it? Like, where do I even start? Is it an IT problem? Is it a business problem? What is the actual answer for this? So with that, I'm gonna bring Jeremy back on the call here.
That's great. Thanks very much. I'll just gonna share my screen. So if you can let me know. Actually, you might need to pass the baton to me, it looks like, Chris. Perfect.
Go.
Okay. Yeah, so as we were just discussing there, like, there's lots of reasons why that profile data is really important to an organization. And there was something at Hyperfish when we formed this product that we saw as a really big gap. It's always been a problem for those that are on the call that are kind of IT pros that maybe own Active Directory, or maybe you own SharePoint server, or Office 365 if you're in the cloud, maybe as a hybrid or true all-in capability. We see that profiles become more and more important as you want to automate business decisions and also want to kind of allow users, users to kind of connect very quickly to each other using that information. And so what we worked on was that we understood there was a lot of efforts in the past to try to fix this by making a form available for users to update, but often those forms weren't kind of readily easily discoverable to organizations because there was no real way to kind of bake that into existing products where information was shown to be able to jump into that form. And so with what we do, we really want to automate those IT processes within organizations so that you don't get this notion of people posting help desk request tickets to make those profile changes. And that we really want to encourage people to update their profiles so that you get that increased employee engagement across all of your systems that rely on that data to do kind of very simple tasks like navigate to Elise and look at who Elise's manager is to then kind of have a meeting with both of them, discuss the topic around marketing, for instance. And then the other big part of it is that without this profile information, more and more now with Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, that it does start to rely on the scenarios where you make decisions based on who the user is running the flow or running the workflow if you're using a third-party product like Nintex or K2. Or if you're still using SharePoint Designer or Visual Studio workflows on premises, there's lots of reasons why that profile information needs to be there, and unfortunately without it there, it really does hurt organizations. So the way that we tackle it at Hyperfish is we actually analyze your directory based on the company standards that you define as an organization. And with those standards in place, Hyperfish starts to learn and understand which fields may be kind of inaccurate, incomplete, or maybe not to the right level of compliance that your organization requires. And then Hyperfish system actually proactively goes and collects the updates directly from those users using kind of personalized messages to encourage them to go and update that information based on what's there right now. And then in the future, we're working on a few things right now where we'll actually go and make suggestions. So one of the major things that we're seeing in customers is that more often than not, people keep their email signatures up to date, but they don't go and keep their profiles up to date in Delve or in SharePoint user profiles, which is if you're on a SharePoint on-premises side. And so we wanted to try and fill that gap. And so a feature we're working on right now, for instance, is the ability to reach into everyone's email signature. And if we discover there's a job title or a mobile phone field available there, we'll actually make that suggestion to the user that, hey, we noticed that your mobile phone number is on your email signature. Would you like to update it into your company directory? And so we're doing a lot of work around kind of getting smarter about knowing where the information might be and then making those recommendations to those users where they live. And so as an example of that, if I jump over to a sample environment here, I have this user, Aaron Painter, and you can see here that Aaron, obviously it's a demo environment, so Hyperfish is all that's kind of communicating with him, has this ability to reach out to Aaron and let them know that there's some missing information on their profile. Now, the benefit of this is unfortunately, we spend a lot of time in email as a worker in a business scenario. So Aaron doesn't have to go and discover where Hyperfish is. Hyperfish has realized that the street address is missing, but that could be manager field or job title or department. And there's a few ways that Aaron can interact with Hyperfish. The first way is he can actually come in here and he could reply to the email directly. So I could be, my city is Kirkland, and just click send. What the Hyperbot does is it receives that email and it will actually kind of process what the instructions are in that email, and then it will make a recommendation back based on what you've posted. In this case, I just put in the city, but it said that we're actually going to change the city from nothing to Kirkland. Now, some users might not be familiar with this notion of responding to a bot in an email, but progressively over time, people will get familiar with it. The nice thing is they can also just jump into update my profile here as a button. And in that button, it'll launch in a new tab and show all of the information for that user, whether it's required or not. And the nice thing is we have branding for these individuals as well, so they can see that this is on an official kind of type website. And we have some nice features that allow you to use magic links, which can be turned off for those that are more security conscious and want people to be logged into these things. But we find that most of our customers, because magic links is one click and you're in, and obviously this URL expires after a certain amount of time, that users can immediately get in there and do their work. Now, this is responsive, so if they receive this email directly inside of their phone, they could click on the link and it would work just as well on the browser in their mobile than it would do on their desktop machine. Now, if I went in here and had a look, you'll see that that Kirkland thing is already updated in my city. So Hyperfish, I interacted it via the email bot and it's automatically gone and updated that inside of the profile. But you will notice here that, for instance, if I go into the employment section, I can go change my my job title here to up from specialist to a manager, and actually make my marketing department correct, because I can't be a marketing manager in IT. But you'll notice that where I'm selecting through these, I have hardwired options. Now, the main reason for this, and this is really important, is that this allows me as an IT person or a business user to then start targeting information to these users based on their departments and not have to worry about someone putting I.T. or IT or information tech in their department name. It enforces that this has to be the value for that department name. And so when the analyzer goes and crawls, it does find existing profiles that don't match one of these options. It will reach out to that user and ask them to go to the form and update that. And so when I click save here, you may have already noticed that I had a few pending fields showing. And so Hyperfish actually allows you to do a very straightforward one-stage approval that can either be someone designated for that particular office location, or maybe organizational wide to approve things such as job title changes or maybe changing your manager field. Now, we support also updating things outside of Active Directory. In this example here, the About Me, Skills, Scores, Education, and so forth, we're actually posting that directly into SharePoint user profiles on premises, but also into SharePoint user profiles online, which is what drives that Delve page. And what we find with customers is that by using this one form to go and update all information across multiple systems, they only have to remember one place. And because we communicate with them via email to notify them through the analysis that we do on a scheduled basis, it's very easy for people to kind of jump in and update these things. Now we have some other kind of gadgets that we find customers find extremely useful, and the consistency of photos is very important. I'm doing a demo at an event tomorrow at Microsoft Build Conference, the developer conference, just to highlight that we're actually using under the covers here the Azure Cognitive Services APIs. So if I wanted to brag that, there's me in the background with Bill and Satya, and I wanted to use this photo as my profile photo in the organization, which shows up, in Skype for Business and in your Delve profile and in your Outlook windows, when I click validate there, we'll actually see that that's saying that there are too many faces in this photo. And so what I'd have to do is, if I wanted to use this photo because it was a favorite picture of me or so forth, is if I crop that down just to me, it would encourage then that I would be able to use that photo inside of the organization and save that in there. And you'll also notice that it's actually pending too. So for instance, someone will have to approve that that photo is of me before it gets changed in all of the system. So we have that notion of adding some smarts there, both from field validation like drop-downs, but also a very common one is for this type of thing to be added in, or different types of formatting. And obviously if I'm in Skype for Business, it doesn't have the right format to do things like click to dial. So we have to make sure we have valid phone formats in there, etc. inside of those profile pages. Now, one thing that's very, very useful is that I have side by side here Aaron and Justin as two individual profiles. And if I scroll down to the employment section, one thing you will notice is that with Aaron's on the left-hand side, we're actually capturing different information. We're capturing a company name and a sales region. And the reason that we do this is because Aaron's actually in our sales department and Justin is in our help desk department. And so we have the ability to basically target different attributes and different roles and even different branding. As you'll see subtly at the top, we have this Contoso corporate brand, and then Contoso Ventures is a sub-brand of that. So we have the ability to target people and target what information is captured based on who that user is. Now if I hover back over to my administration console here instead of Hyperfish, as an administrator, we give you the ability to provide high-level dashboards to see how my organization's going. And if you decided to do proof of concept with us, essentially you'd be able to see at a high level how complete your profiles are within your organization. So this organization is pretty poor. And you can see even down to how many profile pictures or how many people have manager fields and direct reports populated. And over time, you have these progress bars that allow you to see that there are improvements happening as we start adding different information into the environment. So over time, it's great to be able to see that. And we can see that there are actually a few changes that have come through. So for instance, it's pretty obvious that this person is not that person, and that is certainly not going to be Aaron. So I'm just going to reject that photo, but it's great to see that the department has been changed and the marketing manager approval has happened, but obviously that's incorrect because he's in marketing. And we can go and update that sales region there in a bulk way. Now under the covers, the way this works is essentially in our settings screen, we have the ability to configure attributes. And so you can see here we have the manager, job title, and department fields as required fields. And in my formatting here, I have the ability to go in and provide all the job titles that I require for that organization. And we have some customers that are using this where, depending on the type of user they are, what collection they fall into, they can have different job titles listed. So if I'm in engineering, I only see the engineering job titles and so forth. And then for things like phone number formatting, we do use regular expressions. We have a variety of different samples that you can choose, or you can be kind of build as many as you like in there as well. And so this is really useful to start to get the company standards right within your organization for those types of things. And then in addition to that, we are extremely flexible in the sense that you'll notice that there's different sections here: employment, location details, additional information, which actually comply to what we have in this screen. And I have the ability to go in here and actually edit which fields I want in each of those sections, so that if maybe those two are required, if I go and edit this section, it will force me to make sure both of those things are populated rather than just the one. And that allows you to kind of group things together, and I hope that if they jump in and do their job title, you can kind of encourage them that they have to fill in their manager and department as well in that sense. So we make it super simple for you to configure that profile in that way. And as you would have seen, we have the branding both in the page itself with the colors and the themes, but also in the email headers as well when the emails get sent to those users. Now, we know most organizations will want some flexibility around what types of approvals happen for what types of attributes. And so you could just auto-approve everything that goes through, but you're likely to kind of say, well, the job title and the manager and the department field will make sure that that does go through an approver. And we can provide approvers for particular attributes or even all attributes here. So for instance, Barry Joe will only be able to approve the About Me, company name, and description, but Clark's actually going to be able to do the department, job title, manager, and the city. So this allows you to kind of delegate who has to approve the changes that go through the Hyperfish system. Now, in addition to that, we do have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you call your Hyperbot when it communicates with your users. We have companies that do things like company mascots, or they're using, one company is actually using a CEO name with their CEO email to hope that people respond quicker because it looks like it's come from their boss's boss. And we have the ability to change the personality in the way that we describe the emails. So right now we've got this on a relaxed setting, but if you're more formal, want to be more serious with your employees in the organization, you can definitely switch it over to serious. And then I'm in a demo environment, so I have this email going out daily forever. Until that profile is complete based on the rules you configure. But you know, you might have a company where you decide after 5 tries once a week we won't be asking them anymore until you make some changes to those rules. So it gives you that flexibility there. You can make those changes very quickly from in this configuration panel. And then the big thing that we added very recently is collections. And what the collections allows me to do is, as you saw in the demo where I did the split screen, I have the ability to map users based on the organizational unit they fall into in Active Directory. And then if they're purely in Azure Active Directory where organizational units don't exist, we actually are about to ship a new feature that allow you to do these collections based on an attribute rule instead. So if the attribute value is this, then put them in this collection. If the attribute value is that, put them in another collection. But in this demo, we're actually showing that anyone that's in the help desk OUs in Austin, for Contoso in court, but also in Contoso in remote, these will have these rules that have been overridden. So the rules I showed you before in the general master settings, you can see here we have some asterisks. This allows me to jump in and see that it's inheriting all the rules from the master, but for these help desk people, we're collecting pager, for instance, because we want to be able to reach these people outside of hours. But if I went in here and jumped over to the sales team, this is where you would have seen that Aaron, because he's in the sales organizational unit, Aaron would actually have the sales region's company name as additional attributes. And it's very, very easy to go and add attributes too. So if you had an extended AD schema, you could go and create that thing in AD, and then we'd be able to actually come in here and pick those. And you can see here I've already used these particular attributes already for other attribute fields inside of there. And we can give display names and pick the formats that we want and go and create new formats if we require drop-downs for those attributes. And so this gives you a really good overview of how you can use Hyperfish to complete your directory by having all of the attributes populated, but not just populated, but also populated with things that are up to those company standards that you have for things like job titles and department, where you need that consistency across your users so that you can start doing those rules. For anyone that's using dynamic membership in distribution lists and Exchange Server that want to create groups based on membership rules, such as everyone that has a department name of marketing, automatically add them to this distribution list. Well, with Azure Active Directory Premium now, you can actually do dynamic membership not just on distribution lists in the Exchange, but also on Active Directory security groups as well. So you could create security groups which self-manage based on the attributes rules that you set up for things like department equals marketing, for a marketing security group that then you could go and apply to SharePoint or Microsoft Teams or Office 365 groups and so forth. So with that, I'm just going to open up my Q&A panel and see if we actually have any questions here on this.
So while we're waiting for questions, that last feature that you showed, Jeremy, about the attribute mapping. So we actually just did an intranet rollout for a company here, and as part of that, they actually wanted to add sales region to their corporate Active Directory. It wasn't something they previously had, and the reason they wanted to do that is like for this intranet, they wanted it to be contextual, and they wanted to show different reports based on the region they were in and have different approval processes. So when we looked at that, you know, our traditional approach would have been to build out some new form or collect all of the information and pre-populate it and then allow IT to work on it. But because this particular client already had this tool in place, we were able to just go in and add that, send out the mass distribution to everybody and have them auto-populate it themselves. So it was super quick.
Yeah, and what's interesting with that is, for instance, like I think I had hat size here. We had a customer that was giving away branded company hats, but they didn't know what sizes that they needed for each of their employees. So all they did was they added an attribute. I'm trying to think if I've got a spare one here I can use. There we go. We can use car license, which is usually an unused field in AD, and just did hat size like that. And then I've already created the field here, and we just mark it as required. And then essentially what that would do is it allow me to then have this shown, and I'm going to put it on like a category page here. Like I'll put it in the additional information on here so it shows up on the form, is that then that will show up for everyone. But when the analyzer runs overnight and notices that that particular AD field is empty for everybody, it would actually reach out to them via email and actually, sorry if I was on a user, it'd reach out to them via email and actually let them know, look, we need your hat size, can you please either reply or come into the profile and make that change. And so we've made it super easy within the product itself to kind of do that type of approach of go fish with an F, not a PH, fish for information from your users in a hyperactive way in terms of kind of collecting that information where people live. And I think that's the big difference with products that have been in the past in this space where they've been very much about the form itself. We understand that, you know, the analysis is really important, and to get into people's inboxes to encourage them to go reply and update their information.
So Jeremy, if an organization wanted to start to look at this, but the user wasn't necessarily in IT, what would how would they start making a business case for this? Can they, do they sign up for a demo? Do they have to get IT to run the tool? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. We have a free analyzer that you can run at hyperfish.com, and that analyzer can be run in an on-premises environment. We have a tool you download and you just run it as yourself, because everyone has read access to AD, so we can do the analysis based on just your read-only access. And we produce a report very similar to the dashboard that we have in the actual product. So you'll be able to see for your organization whether that's actually, you know, how healthy your directory is. And with that PDF that we produce, we have some information there on ROI for organizations. So to show like why it's important to have profile photos and why it's important to have the manager field and directory available and readily available for all of your organization. And then once you run that analyzer tool, yes, we do recommend that the next step would be either to get a more detailed demo and kind of talk to your DevFacto partner to kind of understand, you know, the best approach to running a proof of concept. And the way that the product can be deployed in a POC perspective is that we have different modes. So we have the ability, I mean, obviously in my demo environment, I'm running this for all of my entire Active Directory, but I actually have the ability to run it as a pilot. And in a pilot, we can provide, sorry, at the top here, pilot participants. So in this case, you can see that I've demoed this before with Aaron and Justin just being the only people it connects to. And the nice part about that is that With our tool, the free analysis, we do it based on what's missing. But obviously, if you went through and set up read-only and set up your job title list and set up your department lists, although the pilot mode would only interact with Justin and Aaron, this dashboard here would report based on your entire organization. So it gives you an ability to get really granular on in your proof of concept there of how healthy your organization is and see how effective it can be with a set of pilot users. And typically with an organization, we'll do it for around 30 to up to 100, depending on the size of the organization, just to get an idea about how that's working and whether you need to do any change management or communication plans to let people know that Hyperfish might start reaching out to you to ask you to change things and so forth. And so that's kind of how I would say the next steps if people are interested in looking about this more. But as I say, hyperfish.com, if you go there right now, you can actually click on the free analysis tool there, and it will take you through the simple steps to either run that in your Office 365 tenant directly or download the analyzer and get going. And also I'd encourage you to fill in the sign-up form there, because we do have I do write a regular weekly blog there where I talk about all sorts of things, and I've restarted doing podcasts. I used to do one when I was at Microsoft, but I'm doing a weekly podcast now, and if you're interested in Microsoft Teams, I just talked to the senior director there, Dan Stevenson, about Microsoft Teams as well. So definitely encourage you to check out some of the content that I'm rolling out there on blog.hyperfish.com too.
Another question, Jeremy. So a lot of newer organizations, especially smaller organizations, they don't have traditional on-prem Active Directory anymore, and they've gone completely to the cloud. How does the tool work in that scenario?
Yeah, so essentially, for those that are kind of astute there you can see I'm logged in at the top. And the way I'm logged in is I'm actually using my Active Directory credentials to authenticate in. So in an Office 365 and hybrid environment, basically we're actually leveraging the Microsoft Graph to authenticate in using your organizational account. So the user would be, as an administrator or as an end user, if you're not using the magic links, would actually be logging in through the standard Office 365 login screens to get into the application. And then when our service is doing the analysis, essentially we use a token that you consent to us using to communicate based on a service account type notion into your Azure Active Directory online. So it's very similar to how we do it on-prem, where we deploy an agent, and the agent runs as a service account based on whatever permissions you grant it, typically scoped to whatever Active Directory organizational units you want Hyperfish scope to be analyzing and updating.
So I've got one more question for you, Jeremy. At the start of this, you talked about you guys were looking to incorporate with the Office Graph and pull out the email signatures. Do you in your roadmap, are you guys looking at pulling in from other sources? Like, I think personally, when information changes around my job, my career, the first thing I do is I update LinkedIn. Is stuff like that in your roadmap?
Yeah, it's funny. We actually talked about this with not with LinkedIn, but we talked internally about this, of kind of looking at LinkedIn and looking at things like job title and company and skills, for instance. And then obviously Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. And we do know that there's integration natively coming between LinkedIn and Microsoft's Office 365 platform, and they announced last week actually integration with Dynamics as an example of that. What we're going to do is very similar to email signature suggestion flow, which is we'll ask you for your LinkedIn profile URL, which also might be useful for people that want to then discover that and then go connect with someone on LinkedIn that's inside their organization. But we'll also then check things like their job title and company name. Now, we do know, though, that some of these suggestions, for instance, feedback we have from a few customers is that sometimes the job title that's external is different from internal. I know, for instance, at Microsoft, my internal one was like Senior Product Marketing Manager, whereas externally I was a product manager. And so we have to be a little bit careful with those suggestions. But the skills, for instance, having the ability to look at your LinkedIn skills and suggest that maybe those skills could be updated if they match to whatever the list of skills is for your internal taxonomy would be extremely useful for those that want to start using people search in a more advanced way to discover users within their organization. And I think that's kind of the key there is that there are lots of sources of information about people that will start kind of looking and analyzing and then suggesting to users that they update it in their profile in AD. But also, we can push out to other systems like SharePoint user profiles, and we're working with customers already on things like pushing updates into PeopleSoft or other HRMS systems where people information is stored. So that's kind of where our kind of futures are in that space, is that we understand that AD isn't always kind of the source of the truth or the kind of the center of the universe for an organization, and that we'll be working very closely with things like PeopleSoft and Workday and Oracle SuccessFactors, for instance, to pull information and push information back into those systems.
Exciting. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, Jeremy. I just want to thank you for coming on. We're really excited about this product. Not from the sense of the work that it's going to drive, more for the abilities that it's enabling within our customer organizations. Because when we come in and we spin up Office 365, it's just a really simple example. We want to make sure that organization is going to get the most out of it right from day one. So it's an amazing product you guys are working on. I want to thank you for.
Thank you. I appreciate the pitch at the beginning as well, because it's really interesting in how important that profile information is, and it's great to see people understanding why that people information is really critical to organizations. And we always joke internally that this has been a problem since Active Directory came around, nearly 20 years ago now, and it's great that we've got a product that actually fixes that problem by kind of crowdsourcing that directly to the users themselves, so that they know themselves better than anyone in the org, and having the ability to kind of ask them directly to update their profiles is perfect.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody on the line for joining us today. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to both Jeremy or myself. And as Jeremy mentioned, if you want to run the free trial of this, you can just go to hyperfish.com and click the free download.
Excellent. Thanks very much for your time, guys. I really appreciate the questions, and yeah, definitely reach out to these guys if you want to hear more information about Hyperfish.
Okay, we'll talk to you later, Jeremy.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.